An investigation into Boeing whistleblower John Barnett's death has ruled that it was a suicide. Charlestown police had been investigating what led to the 62-year-old's death, and last Friday they released a report detailing their conclusion that Barnett died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Barnett had been giving testimony in his whistleblower case in March against Boeing. His death on social media had fueled speculation that foul play could have been involved.
During his 32-year tenure at Boeing, the last 7 of which he was quality control manager, Barnett had raised multiple concerns about safety. He resigned in 2017, but not before blowing the whistle about the South Carolina factory where he worked. That's the factory that builds the 787 Dreamliner. Now, this latest revelation comes as the Senate and the House voted over the last 2 weeks to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Administration, and finally with President Biden signing off on the bill. The legislation is intended to tighten safety standards following the 2 deadly Boeing crashes in 2018 and 2019, plus several mishaps that occurred in aircraft over the last few months, most infamously a safety door opening up mid-air. The bill also aims to increase the number of air traffic controllers, provide for more safety inspections at manufacturing facilities, and requires the FAA to use new technology designed to prevent collisions between planes on runways. New airline planes will now be required to have cockpit voice recorders capable of saving 25 hours of audio, up from the current 2 hours, and that should help investigators after safety incidents.
All right, so obviously there was a lot of speculation around this for a few reasons. One was that he was in the middle of giving this really damning testimony following these mishaps, as we describe them, a door flying off mid-flight, and that his testimony was germane to exactly these kind of safety lapses at the organization. His lawyers who had been working with him, preparing him for the deposition, said that he was in good spirits, and people were really surprised by this. They reportedly told CNN, "We didn't see any indication he would take his own life. No one can believe it." That's a statement that his lawyers gave back on March 12th. And they went on to say, the Charleston police had to investigate this. There was also a statement from a friend of the deceased who said that he told them that he would never commit suicide, that was not a part of his kind of mental state at the time. And moreover, there, of course, was the second Boeing employee who also died, not under necessarily suspicious circumstances, but unexpectedly, shall we say, that seemed to start to create a pattern of these deaths at a time when there was a lot of scrutiny on the company. Now there has been this investigation that has confirmed that the death was, in fact, a suicide. Some new revelations out of that investigation. The police found a note left in the car which had messages that were disparaging to Boeing on them, including F Boeing, family and friends, I love you all caps, I can't do this any longer, exclamation points, enough, exclamation points. The note has been published by the New York Post. You can go and read it there. Also, the note says Trump 2024 with a box written around it. Whistleblowers protection is effed up too, exclamation points. It's hard to tell what to make of a document like that. It certainly isn't a kind of suicide note in a traditional sense.
Sure.
And there does seem to be a little bit of a tension between a note that is still really focused on criticizing Boeing, criticizing protection for whistleblowers, et cetera, and taking your own life when you're on the precipice of actually holding Boeing accountable.
Oh, there is. I mean, I take the point and I take the reason that people are suspicious in circumstances like this. I mean, of course, you would be in some ways foolish not to be suspicious if someone is blowing the whistle on a massive corporate giant. There's a couple of other things I would say, though. One is, people are suspicious and assume that, somehow that Boeing could be directly involved or something. I do think it's important to sort of emphasize the level of personal stress involved in coming forward as a whistleblower in this respect has got to be vast. There has got to be a lot of personal pressure, just, a lot of things to withstand in that process. The other thing, Brie, and not to get into, overly macabre stuff, but, there are a lot of suicides where people afterwards say, I didn't expect the person to do that. And it does not necessarily mean it wasn't a legitimate suicide. Like, a lot of people there's a whole lot of different conversation to have about mental health, but a lot of people keep issues of depression or darkness very, very much locked away. And, the face that we show to friends or significant others or family isn't always what we're thinking deep down.
I think that's perfectly legitimate. I do think that there's a little bit of this trope that, people will tweet this sometimes, if I die, I didn't do it, they're after me, I'm tweeting hard truth. If something happens to me, know that it wasn't at my own hand.
Sure.
And so I do think that's a little bit different than, someone coming out and saying, I feel under threat and, I'm in a difficult situation, but know that it wasn't me. Is a little bit different than just, I thought they were a really happy, nice person. I never would have expected it. And so I think that's a little bit where the tension is.
I do think, sorry to cut across you, but I do think that the comments you mentioned in that note do sort of back up the point that you're making, in a sense, in that is unusual. Let's put it in no more sinister terms than that, for those kind of comments to be made in those kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, so it was this close family friend named Jennifer, this was reported by Newsweek, who said that she didn't believe that this was a suicide, and she claimed that he insisted, I ain't scared, before adding, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. Now, Jennifer, that's hearsay, who knows how much veracity there is in her statement, but that I think played a big role in people being skeptical of what happened with Barnett. We should know that he also goes on to say in this note, his handwriting was authenticated by the police. There were fingerprints on the notebook. He goes on to say, America, come together or die. I pray that Mother Effer that destroyed my life pay. I pray Boeing pays. Bury me face down so Boeing and their lying ASS leaders can kiss my tuchus. Also going on to say some more typical suicide note things about to my family and friends. I found my purpose. I'm at peace. I love you more. So, I don't think that this investigation outcome is going to dissuade people who see conspiracy here from seeing conspiracy here. And certainly there's a lot to question about the circumstances of these deaths. However, I don't know, you also have to contend with, is it just that whoever, if you think that this wasn't a suicide, is it just that whoever did it was very good at setting this up and staging it? And I think we've all watched enough criminal dramas to think that that's perfectly possible. Or was this in fact just a troubled person who was under genuinely a lot of stress, who maybe at one point thought I would never commit suicide, but circumstances change.
And I, as you can probably tell, tend to lean toward the second explanation there. Now, I do get, you see, that because there are circumstances around this, not only about, safety issues in and of themselves, but I should have checked before we did this segment, like the market value of Boeing has presumably come down very, very significantly since these incidents started happening, since whistleblowers started coming forward. So there are enormous stakes here, but I just think it's quite a elaborate leap from whistleblowers say things that damage Boeing and cost Boeing vast sums of money to maybe this suicide is faked and there's something sinister behind it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a good point. We should be really clear about kind of the scale and importance of Boeing, not just as a commercial airline manufacturer, but as a military plane manufacturer. At a time when obviously we're talking about any number of international conflicts and kind of weapons deficits in our own stockpiles because of how many weapons we're sending to Israel. The role that Boeing plays as a kind of a monopoly power in our country, it does ratchet up the stakes, I think, in a way.
And ratchet up the suspicion as well,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
The lends credibility, some veneer of credibility to some of the speculation that's going on here. I certainly don't think it's the case that it's too small potatoes for a company like this to get involved. It's certainly darker things have happened in American history. the most suspicious thing to me about the speculation that these were hit jobs is that at a certain point, it's becoming almost too obvious. With two whistleblowers having died and coming under scrutiny in this way, at a certain point, if a third and a fourth, at a certain point, it stops becoming kind of covert espionage and becomes implausible simply because it's so obvious.
Yeah, although you could go down. I mean, I'm indulging your theories,
this is what the people
but at some level, the obviousness in itself can become the deterrent.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's the whole point about Putin and people with like their falls off hotel balconies. It's not really intended to be a credible explanation.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a nod and a wink towards we off this guy.
Yes, I think that's right. Well, look, it's a tragedy either way. Let us know what you think. We'll continue to follow this if anything else emerges, but stick around. We're rising up next.